So greetings, folks. We are so delighted to have with us Michael Hichborn. He and I were together for the Coalition of Canceled Priests this past weekend. We actually sat at the same table together amidst, I don't know, 400, 450 people. We lose count after a little bit. He was actually one of the presenters at that conference and delivered the most thought-provoking, really top-notch presentation. You can actually go to our website and see the full transcript, read the full transcript. His topic was on Spiritus Mundi and the spirit of the world. And go to our resource tab and you can read that transcript. Or if you want to see his riveting presentation, you can go to YouTube, Coalition for Canceled Priests, and see him present that. It was really well done. And he and I got to have dinner with Jesse Romero and Anita and my husband, and it was fun. We went to this Brazilian steakhouse. But then Michael, he didn't actually even have any of the ultimately all the meat. But we had enough for him.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
The rest of us they had to just basically almost carry us out of
That's usually how it goes there.
Yeah, that's right. But as I remember, you had a big meal, with your brother beforehand. So anyways, well, welcome. We're about to get on a serious topic as opposed to something as joyful as we just had. And what this is, folks, is Michael has blown the lid off of the largest Catholic hospital system in the country, Common Spirit Health System. He has uncovered that they have basically been doing these transgender surgeries and other treatments. They even offer it to their employees.
Yeah.
And he's going to tell us more about this. We're going to get into this. He has had so many interviews. We're just fortunate to be able to get this time with him. And he's going to tell us a little bit of the nuances of what people are trying to, pick apart with this as well, and why that is misleading people. And I can tell you, as a businesswoman that has 35 years in business, by the way, I led strategy for a multi-billion-dollar insurance organization, where, by the way, I led mergers and acquisitions with due diligence, where we structure transactions to what they call put in a Chinese wall between organizations. You're going to find out how they did a lot of organizational gymnastics to try to avoid what's happening here. And don't be fooled. So Michael, why don't you tell folks what you've uncovered, and then we'll get into some of those details.
Sure. The nuts and bolts of the report that we put together, it's 64 pages long. We found that Common Spirit Health, which is the largest Catholic health network in the United States, it's also the second largest nonprofit hospital system in the United States. So it's very large. Common Spirit Health, it has its Catholic identity, or it derives its Catholic identity from what's called a public juridic person. Public juridic person in canon law is effectively the same thing as a corporation. And it allows the organizations beneath it to carry the Catholic identity. So this public juridic person is called the Catholic Healthcare Federation. It was created by a dicastery in Rome. And after it created this entity, this entity actually is the Catholic Church, so to speak. It's not a representative of the Catholic Church. It's not an aspect of the Catholic Church. According to all its formation, it is the Catholic Church. Common Spirit Health is a subsidiary of the Catholic Healthcare Federation. The Catholic Healthcare Federation gives it its Catholic identity. This was, of course, examined by canon lawyers and bishops and so forth to try and make sure that everything is in line with church teaching, et cetera, et cetera. Now, maybe that's true to a point. Maybe those bishops and canon lawyers only saw some of the aspects and not the whole thing. Because as I was digging through this, the whole Common Spirit Network was created in 2019 as a merge between Dignity Health, which is in California, and the Catholic Health Initiative, which is headquartered in Colorado, but has locations all over the Midwest, down in Texas, and even on the East Coast as far as Alabama. So the merge between these two entities, of course, it goes through a lot of legal rigmarole. And as they were creating this, they created what they called carve-out clauses that allow the non-Catholic hospitals to be members of Common Spirit to a certain point, but that they are under their own entity, their own legal entity. However, they're all part of Common Spirit. And you talked about how we're going to get into some of the responses. I actually got a call from the Catholic News Agency yesterday, and he asked a series of questions about Common Spirit Health. And, well, could you have possibly gotten it wrong about the structure? And could you have gotten it wrong about this and maybe that? And it looks very much like his article is going to be a hit piece when it comes out. But the crux of his questions were focused on the fact that St. Francis Memorial Hospital, which is the entity that we found specifically performing transgender surgeries in the name of Common Spirit, it's a member of Common Spirit, it's not a Catholic hospital. And so the Archdiocese of San Francisco said, oh, it's not a Catholic hospital. There's a carve-out clause that allows it to continue doing certain things, regardless of whether it's a member of Common Spirit or not. And so he said, well, what about these legal things? And I said, you can't create legal barriers to a moral problem within a Catholic organization and still call it Catholic, period.
That's
just can't
exactly
do that.
Right. Let me analogize this for you folks. In the insurance industry, we have what's called reinsurance. And if an insurance company fronts the business and puts it on their paper, and I call that Common Spirit, it's on their name, okay? And then they cede that off to another company and let them do whatever they want. And that other company unethically treats their customers a certain way, underwrites that policy a certain way. Guess what happens under Department of Insurance standards? Ultimately, guess who it goes back to? The main company that's on the front end of it, that paper. Right. Why would it be any different here? So Common Spirit, who is the ultimate entity under, who's the parent company for all of this,
yep,
ultimately has to take responsibility for all the entities underneath its umbrella.
Yeah. And, one of the excuses that I read was, well, Common Spirit Health has its board, and this separate entity for this carve out for these other hospitals that are still somewhat quasi a member of Common Spirit, but not fully. They have a separate board and those board members don't overlap. It doesn't matter because the merge took place on the level of the Catholic Healthcare Federation.
Yeah.
So when you created that merge and representatives were on both on that board, all bets are off.
That's right.
Because the Catholic Healthcare Federation is the parent organization for it all. Common Spirit Health is directly beneath it, and all of the other things flow from that. When St. Francis Memorial Hospital, which is a member of Common Spirit, it says it's a member of Common Spirit. Common Spirit has funneled millions of dollars to this hospital. When they say, well, but it's not a Catholic hospital, is smoke and mirrors. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's
Yeah.
a member of Common Spirit. It is acting in the name of Common Spirit. You're giving it money, Common Spirit. Your board members, actually your CEO, is singing the praises of this entity because of the trans surgeries that they're performing. So the bottom line is this is a Common Spirit initiative, plain and simple.
Of course it is. And another way that I always tend to look at structural organizations that come together, you flip it on its head and you say, why did you come together in the first place? Okay. Because you must have come together to gain, they call it synergistic value when you come together in a merger. All right. So there must have been a reason that you derived benefit from coming together with dignity and with Common Spirit under the Common Spirit Health umbrella, the system umbrella. So you know that there was a derived benefit from those two entities coming together. So by, in fact, that derived benefit, you know that when St. Francis was doing these transgender surgeries and earning profit from those, disgusting profit from chopping up people's bodies instead of respecting their dignity as children of God and taking those profits, the entire entity is then the fruits of those are all tainted. So if you derive benefit from the merger, you also poison the tree from it. So it goes both ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting because one of the things that I discovered just the other day, because I keep getting tips now with all the research that I've been doing on Common Spirit. Someone sent me a tip and said that Common Spirit's partner called TIA Women's Health, it's a clinic, it's a women's health clinic, is now doing telemed abortions.
Oh.
And I started looking into the background, and what I found is there was a 2021 announcement. It's right there on Common Spirit's website. It says TIA or TIA and Common Spirit Health team to deliver integrated person-based care for women. And it talks about how they're now a partnership. They have a joint venture together. I don't know exactly what that means, but there's a portion here that says the initial TIA Common Spirit pilot will launch virtual first in spring of 2021, followed by its first brick and mortar clinic closing this October in Phoenix, with expansions in Arizona and other Common Spirit markets over the next few years. And so I then looked at some of the TIA women's health articles and stuff coming out, and it talks very openly about how they are doing these telemed abortions. They didn't do abortion before, but now that they have a partnership with Common Spirit, they're doing them now.
Yeah. So, and TIA, so what's their relationship?
That's what I can't really figure out. It says that there's a partnership, and somehow TIA is now accessing the Common Spirit market.
Yeah. So let me explain that to you. So I was an audit partner with the largest accounting firm in the world. Okay. PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I was an audit partner actually for a couple of hospital systems. And so what those hospital systems do, other than acquiring through 100% ownership, those hospital systems, they also do joint ventures and alliances with various organizations and doctors groups, okay, and surgical centers. And this is the way they vertically integrate and horizontally spread out to create a larger network. Okay. So my guess, if I were to guess, under their joint ventures and alliances arm, is they've created this partnership.
Interesting.
And so there's a partnership agreement that they now have with TIA.
Well, what does Common Spirit get out of it?
Well, Common Spirit gets a cut of the profits.
Oh,
And even though they're a not-for-profit, and this is what happens with hospital systems, they've been challenged by the IRS. How much of your business is derived from profit versus not-for-profit activity?
hmm.
Because, you know, the IRS is onto them,
Right.
because there's a lot of for-profit activity that is going on in these hospital systems. And they're concerned about that. So they try to create these barriers
Hmm.
for their for-profit activity. And so they do these things to try to break off and create that, what I call the Chinese wall.
So they create almost a partnership membership relationship
Yeah.
where this partnership is actually a membership, and that membership, which is a cut of the profits, is not a sale per se of a
No,
service or a good. It is simply a dues that is
it's a
paid for.
well, it's not a dues, it's a cut of the profit. So
Well,
in
yeah,
other
but
words, they get a percentage of the revenue
uh-huh.
that's derived from that. Or sometimes what happens is somebody will come in for that service and then they need something else. And then there's a referral to the hospital system. And
Wow.
so then what happens is it's filling, I call it filling the beds,
Mm,
because the hospital system, what are they created for? To fill the beds.
right.
And that's what they're created for. But anyway, so but to get back to this main point, that this is analogous to the church itself, to Catholic Relief Services, to Campaign for Human Development. They all try to argue that they are pristine, but then a vendor down the path is doing something that's illicit with their money.
Hmm.
Okay. And that they have the alligator hands. Okay. They're completely clean. It's not them that's doing it.
Oh, except the common spirit's not clean.
Well, tell
Yeah.
us about that. How
Yeah.
is it the common spirit directly is not clean?
So first of all, the hospital that I mentioned, St. Francis Memorial Hospital, it is a member of Common Spirit. It belongs to Common Spirit. While there may be some legal wall, as you pointed out, that it hides behind, the fact of the matter is it says on its own website, we're a member of Common Spirit, and they have certain hotlines that say, hey, call Common Spirit for X number of, for whatever information that they have linked to it. Uh, we also know through Common Spirit's tax form 990s that they have given millions of dollars to the St. Francis Memorial Hospital. We know from their philanthropic fund that they gave millions of dollars to St. Francis Memorial Hospital for the purchase of what they called a Da Vinci machine. It's a surgical robotic unit for the performance of sex change operations. We know from Common Spirit's own documentation that it is giving health benefits policies to employees that cover sex change operations, hormone therapies, and puberty blockers for kids. We also know that the Catholic hospitals within Dignity Health that belongs to Common Spirit, those Catholic hospitals that, you can't say they're not Catholic, they have a policy that those Catholic hospitals have to refer to other in-network hospitals for services that they don't themselves perform. So if there's a Catholic hospital that doesn't provide, the top surgeries or the whatever other surgeries, they have an obligation, if a patient is seeking them, to refer to another hospital within network that does perform these operations. On top of that, we also know that Common Spirit has its own podcast called The Ethics Lab, which is not ethical. The host of the podcast is a senior vice president who's in charge of something about theology, theology and morality. So it's like, ooh, who's this guy? He did an episode on transgenderism.
Oh my
And in
word.
this episode on transgenderism, he had these trans people who work with Common Spirit, And they were talking about how transitioning from one sex to another is a spiritual experience. And one of them even told the story about how they helped a 15-year-old girl transition, and the biggest obstacle that they faced was bringing the mother along.
Oh my word.
This was all in the ethics lab, and it was all in favor of that butchery that they're committing there.
Oh my gosh. So, all right. So that is, I mean, that is so much evidence that it's so clear to me. Have you taken this to the bishops? And what are the bishops doing about it?
Well, there's not much that the bishops can do about it, because Common Spirit, which belongs to the Catholic Healthcare Federation,
Right.
answers only to Rome.
Right. So what's going to happen?
Well, I think that what bishops need to do, first of all, they need to examine whether their Catholic hospitals in Common Spirit are directly performing any of these services. They need to have a thorough vetting and an audit of those hospitals. That's step one. Step two is these bishops have an obligation to write to Rome and say, this is abominable. This has to stop. And if they don't stop, your excellencies in Rome, have an obligation to strip this hospital system of its Catholic identity.
So this is so big. It's because a Vatican seal of approval, it's like the Good Housekeeping seal of approval. Am I characterizing that accurately? They're, in essence, I mean, it's way bigger than if I go and seek a bishop's approval to operate as a Catholic entity under they've got the Vatican seal.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's right. Well, they are operating in the name of the Catholic Church.
I mean,
and they make it clear on their website, we're a Catholic organization. We do Catholic things. Isn't that great?
Yes.
And it's a lie.
Yeah, it's a complete lie. And so, I mean, at a bare minimum, it would seem that there should be a cease and desist on everything that they're currently doing. But at the tail, I mean, they should have their Catholic identity removed.
I agree. Absolutely. And I think that the bishops need to start leading acts of public reparation for this horrible, horrible abomination that's taking place in the name of the church.
Yeah, I can't believe that hasn't already begun. Then again, I mean, they didn't even show up to process to the LA Dodger Stadium.
One did.
Well, one, thank God, and look what's happening to him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I could pose so many questions to you. I suppose my next question is, how many media outlets have you interviewed with?
Goodness, dozens.
Okay, dozens.
Yeah, I've been in community. I mean, the Epoch Times broke the story, and the Daily Wire did 3 articles on this, and they were all over Twitter with it. Yeah. I did an interview with Jack Posobiec. I did an interview. I mean, I've done dozens of television and radio interviews now, not with, legacy media. Fox News isn't knocking on my door, but
well, we know that they are very trans friendly. Unfortunately, it's shocking to me. They're not the conservative media outlet that
big money in it.
That's what I think. That's exactly what I think. Are there any Catholic media outlets that you've wanted to get into that you haven't been able to get into?
Well, I would like to have EWTN or National Catholic Register. And, I told you I was contacted by Catholic News Agency. I'd like for them to actually honestly approach my report and really, truly report on the horror show that's taking place in the name of the Catholic Church, instead of trying to find a way to discredit me. Yes. Which is what it seems like Catholic News Agency is trying to do.
I mean, I came at your report. I read the entire 64-page report, and I did.
Yeah.
And I came back at it from a business person perspective, because obviously that's the way I look at it. And folks, if you're not familiar with this, I was a trained auditor, and I did auditing for, my 35 years. I probably did auditing for over 20 years. And so it was quite impressive, the evidential matter that Michael was able to obtain to come to his conclusions. And it's all laid out in this report, and you can get it right on Lepanto's website. So he just lays it all out for anybody that wishes to really look at the evidence. So it's really irrefutable. So the thing that I am drawn to is you have somebody like EWTN that hasn't yet looked at the report. You got to be perplexed by that. What's your take on that?
Well, going back to the example of Catholic News Agency, which is owned by EWTN.
Sure.
The reporter said, well, back in 2016, there was a controversy because CRS disputed your report about, their involvement with the distribution of contraception in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And then, the Archdiocese of Philadelphia disputed your research regarding the World Meeting of Families, the board of the World Meeting of Families that was taking place in Philadelphia. And he said, why should Lepanto Institute be considered reliable? I mean, why don't you ask CRS that question? Why don't you ask CCHD that question?
Yeah.
Why don't you ask Common Spirit that question? But you're going to ask me.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Let's go ahead and address that. First of all, and this is how I responded to him. The report in 2016, when the bishops decided that when CRS decided they were going to try and figure out what I was doing over in Africa, they preemptively got two letters, one from Kenya and one from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the bishops' conferences there. They were identical letters, and they distributed those letters to the bishops saying, Michael Hichborn's over in Africa and he's researching something about CRS, but we got these letters of support, so we know that we're doing good work. Really? Really, that's your evidence?
So as an auditor, folks, that's not even corroborative evidence, by the way.
No.
Yeah.
So then on top of that, once my report came out, CRS disputed not the facts of the report. They disputed their involvement in the distribution of contraception in their communities. What we found in our report was that we found inventory reports showing that CRS received and distributed 2.25 million units of contraception in their area for this particular project. CRS said, well, this report was created by somebody else who really should have understood how carefully they have to craft these things. What are you trying to hide? And what CRS then said was, we weren't the ones who distributed the contraception. It was another entity that did it.
Exactly what I'm talking about.
Are you kidding?
Like so the alligator hands.
Yeah.
Oh, well, another entity did it, so we have clean hands.
Right. I mean, that's like saying, oh, well, I'm the principal of a school, and yeah, there's a drug problem in our school. The drug dealers are over there, but I'm not the one giving it out to the kids.
And we're letting the drug dealers in to have access to the kids.
Yeah.
But, it's not us. We're not.
Right. Oh, and by the way, you're helping to facilitate the funds to those drug dealers anyway.
We're actually funding the drug dealers to come into the school. But
but we didn't touch it. See, our hands are clean. Yeah.
Exactly. And that, I don't know if you saw the Catholic Vote newsletter this morning. You were vindicated.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
So I wrote also to this Catholic News Agency reporter, and I said, here's an article you might be interested in. It's a little familiar because CRS was citing the African bishops, but it turns out they were lying. They changed their story 3 times. Sounds familiar, kind of like that story that you were citing from 2016.
Methinks that there's some, I'll tell you, these bishops, they're something else. Because you can't, I hate to say it, I don't want to malign anybody, but when you see all the evidence stacking up, it really disturbs me.
Well, my experience with CRS, they're liars.
Well, they are.
They are liars, and they lie to the bishops.
Well, but then you tell the bishops what's going on, and the bishops aren't doing anything about it. So this
I
is why I'm asking the
Yeah.
bishops, what's within their control is, to your point, they could trigger audits. They
Mhm.
could trigger audits of Common Spirit all over the United States because Common Spirit is that big. I
Right.
saw your report. So my next question is this: the USCCB, they obviously have their position paper out on the transgender, and just recently they've amended it regarding
Mhm.
the transgender treatment at Catholic hospitals. Are you happy with their direction?
Well, I'm happy with the initial letter that they came out with.
Okay.
I'm also happy that the bishops voted unanimously to decide to, amend the ethical and religious directives for Catholic healthcare. I think that those are moves in the right direction. However, we have to be very, very wary of Cardinal Supich, Cardinal Tobin, Cardinal McElroy, who are standing in direct opposition and trying, not in opposition to the amending of these things, but well, we have to have consultations with trans people and with doctors, and we have to have these different ethical conversations regarding, what is acceptable with it. It's no.
No,
Who is the moral authority? You are.
exactly.
Who is the medical authority? The medical authority answers to you. If
Exactly.
the medical authority says, we would like to conduct all kinds of experiments, it would be great for all of humanity if we could conduct these experiments, the bishop has to say, guess what? No.
Yeah.
Human experimentation is not legit. It's
No, it's
something you
not.
can't do.
Well,
So
yeah, and the thing is, we've all, in the short amount of time that these transgender surgeries are happening, we're already having these young adults suing
yeah,
these hospital
yep,
systems. I
yep.
mean, like, what more evidence do you
Don't the
need?
bishops haven't they been sued enough? you know,
I mean, do we have to have any more bankruptcies or moving real estate around to figure out that we don't want any more of that?
Your Excellency, do we need to have another conversation?
I know, exactly. All right. Well, this is great. Is there anything that I haven't asked, Michael, that we should lay on the table, especially for the faithful? Is there anything that the faithful should be doing? Because you've done your heavy lifting.
Well, I'll tell you what, when CNA's article comes out and when it says something about, oh, the veracity of the Lepanto Institute is in question, go to our website, read our report, and then compare it with what they say.
Okay,
And I
very
think that that's exactly how we're going to remedy the counter narrative that they're trying to generate.
okay. That's awesome. That's great. And I would say to everyone, go and support Michael Hichborn, Lepanto Institute. It's impressive, with such a small staff. I mean, I don't know how you do it, honestly, because I've done auditing in my career, 2 decades of it. And I know what it takes to produce this kind of quality work that stands up to the level of scrutiny of all these media outlets that want to, basically run him over with a bus. And I'm telling you, he needs to be financially supported. He is the only pit bull that we have that is going to hold these Catholic organizations accountable, that should be in alignment with Catholic doctrine. So please get over there to Lepanto Institute and support them. And by the way, he has a fantastic newsletter. Subscribe to his newsletter. So thanks a lot. Thank you. Let's say a St. Michael prayer.
Sure.
Let's pray that. In the name of the Father and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And I'll ask you to lead us.
All right. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen.
St. Michael, pray
Pray
for
for
us.
us.
In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Michael, it's so good to see you. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
All right. Appreciate it. Bye now.
All right.